Love in the prehistoric world wasn't just some wild animal instinct. Fossils and DNA buried under layers of ancient permafrost are telling us a much more surprising story. Love was a sophisticated survival strategy. Our ancestors created what were basically encoded dating profiles. Women held the ultimate power of choice, and sometimes they were willing to choose a partner from an entirely different human species. Imagine this. You're living in the middle of the Ice Age. Your entire world is just a small group of about 30 people. The same faces, every single day. So who do you choose as a partner? Our instincts might tell us to pick someone close by, someone inside the group, someone familiar, someone safe. But 34,000-year-old skeletons from the Sungir site in Russia reveal something astonishing. The people buried there had almost no close genetic overlap. In other words, they were not closely related. They didn't know biology. They didn't have medicine. They didn't understand genetics the way we do today. But somehow our ancestors understood one life or death rule. Inbreeding was a genetic disaster. So how did they keep their bloodlines alive? They walked. Far. During the harshest winters, hunter-gatherer groups crossed frozen valleys to gather around massive campfires. There, the elders would sit down and negotiate exchanges of young men and women between groups. Marriage back then was not just romance. It was a survival treaty. To marry someone from the next valley meant your tribe had a new blood ally. It meant that if a snowstorm wiped out your food supply, someone out there might still share a piece of reindeer meat with you. Love, it turns out, may have been humanity's greatest lifeline. But in the middle of those huge winter gatherings, surrounded by hundreds of strangers, how did anyone know who was single? Who belonged to which alliance? And who was actually open to finding a partner? The answer was right there on their clothes. At the Sungir site, archaeologists were stunned to find thousands of mammoth ivory beads sewn by hand onto clothing. Drilling just one hole into ivory with primitive stone tools could take hours. So a coat covered with 3,000 beads? That meant thousands of hours of labor. Hours spent working through hunger, through cold, through the brutal pressure of survival. That level of effort was never just about looking pretty. Scientists began to understand the mystery by comparing it with modern nomadic cultures. Those elaborate clothes were not fashion. They were a visual code, a prehistoric profile. Even today, the Wadabe people of the Sahara decorate their clothing with thousands of shells to signal identity, beauty, and marital status. Our ancestors may have been doing something very similar. Under the flickering light of a campfire, one quick glance at the pattern of ivory beads could tell you everything you needed to know. I come from the northern tribe. I am healthy. I am available. And I am looking for a partner. No polished dating bio, no perfect profile picture. If that theory is right, the shimmer of mammoth ivory may have been one of humanity's earliest dating signals. But once two people locked eyes, who actually had the final say? The answer may shatter a lot of our assumptions. In many prehistoric societies, women may have had far more choice than we usually imagine. The power to say no. And that makes sense. Women were not just standing beside men, fighting to survive the brutality of the Ice Age. They were also carrying the future of the species. Around the fire, a man could show up wearing the most impressive ivory-covered coat anyone had ever seen. He could make his case. He could show off his strength. He could try to impress everyone. But the final decision, that belonged to the woman. And Ice Age women were extremely practical. In a world where death was always close, the biggest green flag in a man was not giant muscles or a terrifying appearance. It was endurance, a calm temperament, intelligence, and most importantly, the ability to bring meat back to camp. On the other hand, violence and laziness were immediate red flags, deal breakers. But the most astonishing thing about prehistoric marriage wasn't how it began. It was how it ended. Marriage back then was not a cage. If a husband became lazy, selfish, or cruel, his wife didn't need a court hearing. She didn't need divorce papers. And there was no complicated property battle. She could simply gather her belongings, take her children, and walk to another camp to find a new partner. That was it. Over. A kind of no-fault divorce thousands of years before the modern world even had a word for it. Our ancestors loved, lived, and chose with an extraordinary amount of personal freedom. But that openness may not have stopped at the boundary between one human group and another. What would happen if, one day, while crossing a snowy valley in search of a partner, a young woman encountered a man who wasn't even the same species as her? Picture the moment when our Homo sapiens ancestors left Africa and reached the cold edge of Eurasia. There, they met a strange, new figure, the Neanderthals. They were stronger, stockier, rougher. and they had already evolved to master the cold. Normally, when two top predators collide, we expect war, competition, maybe even extinction. But that is not what happened. These two human species mated. Modern genetic evidence has revealed a stunning secret. These encounters were not just random accidents. They happened again and again. They were repeated intentional pairings. Maybe there was fear. Maybe there was curiosity. Maybe there was attraction. We'll never know. But the DNA is clear. These two human groups came close enough, often enough, to become part of each other's story. If your ancestors were among the people who moved into Asia, Europe, or the Americas, look down at your hands right now. You may be carrying about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Those fragments of DNA may have helped fine-tune parts of our immune system. They may have given our ancestors a better chance of adapting to new lands. And in a world full of new dangers, that small advantage could mean survival. It helped our ancestors fight deadly diseases in new lands. It helped them endure the bone-cutting cold of the Ice Age. And it helped them survive long enough to become the dominant human species on Earth. So maybe it was not brutality that saved humanity. Maybe it was not weapons. Maybe what truly saved us was openness and the freedom to choose who we loved. Tens of thousands of years have passed. We have replaced ivory-covered coats with shiny Tinder bios. We have traded long walks across frozen valleys for coffee dates in warm little cafes. But the core instinct is still the same. We are still searching for signals, for connection, for safety, for the right to choose the life we want. So the next time you look into the eyes of the person you love, remember this. Your love is not just a feeling. It is one of the greatest survival legacies humans have ever inherited. It comes from small, fragile people who dared to cross the line between life and death. People who crossed valleys, crossed tribes, and sometimes even crossed the boundaries between human species just to choose each other. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If you found today's topic interesting, make sure to subscribe so we can keep exploring more stories like this together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.